Hi, I'm Steve Bourie, and I am the author of the American Casino Guide book. If you're not familiar with the book, be sure to visit our website at americancasinoguidebook.com. Today we're going to talk about dice control, and joining me is Matt Bourie.
Yeah, and I'm the editor of the American Casino Guide, and today we have with us the Dominator, or Dom for short, from Golden Touch Craps, and we're going to talk to him today about his dice control system that he has. I guess it used to be called rhythmic rolling. It's now pretty much called dice control, and he teaches a class on it, and we're going to talk to him today. How are you doing today, Dom?
Doing really great. I'm looking forward to the interview, guys.
Okay, so I guess we should start out with an introduction on you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into controlled dice shooting, and all that.
Well, sure. I'm 67, so maybe about 42 years ago, when I was in New York City and trying to start my software company that I still own. I needed a way to make some extra money, to support my family, as I was out there cold calling and trying to get accounts. And so because of the math background that I have, degrees in that, in math and stuff, sciences, I decided, and I love the game, I love cards. Played cards as a little kid with my grandfather sitting on his lap, one of my most cherished pictures I own. I learned how to count cards. And I could count down a deck of cards in about 11 seconds. And I'd go to Atlantic City on a day trip, take a bus. They'd give you a $5 coupon. They gave you some food and some other stuff like that. And I'd come back home with 35 or 40 bucks in cash. And back then, 40 some odd years ago, 41, 42 years ago, that was a hell of a lot of money. That was, a full gas in my tank, some food, and maybe even a pizza on Friday night. And as I kept on doing that, I had a very small bankroll. I practiced for about 6 months and built up a bankroll, maybe about 150 bucks. But back then, the games that were in Atlantic City were 25-cent games, dollar games in blackjack. It's a different time period. So as the years went on, my bankroll grew, and I had friends that asked me to teach them. They wanted to learn how to count, and so I did. So I started to have teams around the country. Now, as the game of blackjack changed in the sense of casinos trying to take every nickel and dime from the players by changing rules, by changing penetration, but just a ton of different things in blackjack, I looked at the game of craps as another game in the casino that could be beat with some learning and practice. And the reason why I looked at that game as a game that could be beat, because basically all we're doing in the game of craps is throwing dice. So we have a moving projectile that goes into the air and lands. So with my physics background, I looked at the game of craps as just a physics problem. It's a moving projectile in the air. And any moving projectile in the air goes through what they call 6 degrees of freedom. And because I was a pretty good athlete as a kid, piano player, so I had real good tactile fingers and I built model planes and just a lot of different things. My tactile feel was really pretty good, and so was my hand-eye coordination. And so I looked at it and said, okay, well, if I could reduce the amount of sevens that is thrown randomly by throwing the dice a certain way, the same way all the time, and reduce 3 of those 6 degrees of freedom, this game could be beat. Because blackjack and craps are really the only game in the casino that can be beat with some skill. Blackjack as far as a card counter, and dice, craps, because the game is in your hands. It's in the shooter's hands.
I would think that the very low house edges on those games help as well too.
Well, exactly right, and that goes into just the way you're going to bet on this game. So I asked my dad, and don't mean to bore you with the story, but I asked my dad to build me what I call a little practice rig. and I started fooling around with dice sets and throwing and all this sort of stuff. And that's the way this whole thing really started for me. And then, there were other people around the country that were doing the same sort of thing for whatever reasons they were. And I got involved with them as well. Through a mutual friend that passed on right now, he introduced me to other dice controllers, and this whole thing became a revolution, I like to say. We just noticed that people that took care with the dice just seemed to have longer extended rolls. Instead of just taking them up and whipping them down the table, if you just took some care with them and tried to throw them the same way, you could beat the game with proper betting. And that's it. That's how I got started.
Okay, let me interject here. So basically, there's a lot of people who don't believe in dice control. It's been around for a while. It used to be called rhythmic rolling many years ago, and now it's called dice control. And through the years, I mean, it's a very controversial subject. So what we're trying to do today is you have some success at this. You teach the class. There's been a couple of you mentioned a couple of TV shows. Actually, one of them was on the History Channel. It was about you personally, your success at this. So you are someone who has been successful at this, but there are other people who doubt how well it works. So this is something we want to take a look at today. And like you say, so on average, it's once every 6 rolls, a 7 comes up, correct?
That is correct.
So just if you can just change it so it comes up less often, you would statistically get an edge at the game, correct?
That is the whole idea behind it.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I think a lot of people sort of have a misunderstanding about it. A lot of people think that if you're some great controlled dice shooter, you can pick up the dice and throw boxcars, throw a double 6 every time, and you get paid 30 to 1, 31 to 1, whatever it is, depending on the casino. And that's not exactly how it works. I believe the term I see thrown around a lot is you're trying to statistically depress the number of 7s, correct?
That is correct. I get that a lot. I'll have people call me and the students, can you teach me how to throw a 12 all the time? No, pal. I can't teach you how to throw a 12 all the time. Mickey Mantle didn't go up to bat and hit a home run every time he got to hit a baseball. The idea behind what we do is exactly what you said, Steve, and what you said, Matt, and that is we're trying to reduce the presence of a 7. And if we can reduce it against random, then we can beat the game. I mean, it's just that simple. All you have to do is reduce the presence of a 7, and you don't have to reduce it by that much to beat this game, as long as you bet properly.
Now, we had mentioned earlier that you were on some TV shows, right? So you did, I think you had mentioned it, there was the History Channel, and I believe it was about people that beat the casinos for a lot of money, and I believe most of them were cheaters, and you were the only one that wasn't a cheater, correct?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little about that as well, but, people can look me up. I'm actually listed as the 8th best gambler of all time. The people ahead of me have all passed on, so I think I should move up in that list since I'm still alive and kicking. But the History Channel did a full documentary on me. They had a 6, or maybe it was a 10 series called Breaking Vegas, and every week they did a documentary on somebody. Everybody that they did, except for me and a roulette father and son team out of France, were the only people that weren't cheaters. Everybody else was a cheater who designed slugs for slot machines or whatever. My particular show was the #1 show in that series, as well as even to this day, the DVD of that show is the #1 selling DVD on the History Channel. So people began to call me and said, hey, can you teach me? And that's how I decided to, instead of being underground and undercover, to just come forward with it. Why? I was beginning to get banned at a lot of different casinos around the country. And I really wanted to show people that and teach people how to beat this game. So if I couldn't beat the casino, then my students could beat the casino. And that's how it started. But yeah, I mean, the History Channel they did an awful lot of research. I talked to a lot of people about my credibility and who I am. And, Playboy's done interviews with me, a great article in Playboy, New York Times. They called me up when the lady who had a 4.5-hour role, Patricia DeMarco, in Borgata about 8 years ago. That's a funny story as well. But she threw the dice for about 4.5 hours. And they called me up because they did an article about her and the situation at the Borgata with her. And just so, yeah, as far as credibility is concerned, yeah, I think I have it all. And I also have 4 books out there, and yeah.
All right. Well, let me ask you this, because people are going to say, okay, this guy, he's got this course. He teaches you how to win at craps by trying to control the dice. And probably all going to say, well, why isn't he out there making a living doing this? So what do you say to that?
Very simply, I don't think that being a professional gambler, number one, is a good way to make a living. I have students call me all the time. I just want to do this full time. And my recommendation is this: this is a great, beating the casinos with advantage play is a great part-time job. But you never want to get rid of your full-time job with your health insurance and everything else like that, because going to the casino and trying to make a living will put an awful lot of stress, not only on yourself, but on your family. You're not going to be able to stay in one place, in one city. You're going to have to travel because you are going to get banned, just like the movie 21 with the card counters. They eventually got caught because they just continued to go to Vegas, and so you have to travel a lot. It's a great part-time job. You can take money out of the casinos, make a nice part-time living doing that extra income that's coming in, get all the food for free and the comps and all that good stuff like that. But you got your day job always there to pay your rent and your mortgage and your open heart surgery for your dad if you need.
Yeah, I know. I've always
Matt, you and I always say the same thing, though, because people have this fantasy that you could be a professional gambler. It's the greatest thing in the world, and it's not.
Right.
It's really
not.
Uh-huh.
I've had people that have done it, and they were great shooters, students that are great shooters. And 2 people come to my head. One is a female, one is a male, and just blew everything they had because the stress was way too much. They start chasing the losses. It just changes everything about you. You got to have a personal life. You have to look at this thing and say, I enjoy going to the casinos. Number one, it's something that I enjoy doing as a person. Any person saying that. Now, if I'm going to go there, why should I put my hard-earned money on the line with a wing and a prayer, hoping that I pull that slot machine and I win $1 million today? It is not going to happen. But if you enjoy going to a casino and you enjoy that entertainment, which is, nothing wrong with it. There's over 62 million people that travel to casinos every year in this country. It's a great form of entertainment. It's not when you say to somebody nowadays, I'm going to Vegas on a vacation, they don't look at you as being weird anymore. Going to Vegas is a lot of fun. The casinos are beautiful. The shows are phenomenal. The restaurants, anything you want to eat, it's just great stuff. So instead of putting hard-earned money on the line and hoping that you win and saying, well, I lost $500, but I had a good time. Well, I don't think losing $500 is a good time. There are ways you can beat this game, any game, blackjack or craps, and I teach both, and I have books on both. Simple way of counting cards and what I do in dice control. There are things that somebody can do if they enjoy going to a casino with some practice, can gain an edge. Listen, if you enjoy golf, a lot of people will take a golf lesson. So if you enjoy going to a casino, then why not take or read a book on how to play blackjack better or how to play craps better and avoid all the carnival games that the casinos want you to play that you just can't beat.
Okay, now, well, as you said earlier, being a professional gambler is not an easy job because it's not like, even if you have an advantage, you're not going to win every single time you go. It's just how it works. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have good days. So Could we talk about some of your examples of bad days and good days? Like, what are some, like, the most you've won in a day or the most you've lost in a day, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, I don't talk about dollar amounts, but I can give you a call. Sure. The worst situation I had was I went through 21 straight sessions losing on that day. Sessions meaning I went to either the blackjack table or the craps table, and I lost money 21 straight times.
Wow.
I mean, there in the middle of all that run, I would go back up to my hotel room and stick my thumb in my mouth and curl up like a little baby and say, "What the hell am I doing?" But I knew that I was playing with an edge, and I turned that all around on one session, actually, at the craps table in a casino up north, where I actually had in the casino about an hour and a half roll, and meaning that I held the dice for an hour and a half. I'm not going to say how much money I won, but I can tell you that I had to be walked to the cage with all the chips that were in front of me. The bank of chips that are sitting in front of the dealer, the suit that's behind there, had to be changed 6 times in that roll, meaning that we emptied out that bank 6 times. They had to call for a fill.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen one emptied once before.
Yeah. So it was a huge roll. It was and a lot of big players were at the table too. That's a big difference between that Patricia DeMarco, who had a 4.5-hour roll, and they only had a chip refill 1 time. In fact, the most money that was made on that roll was $38,000. Somebody holding the dice for 4.5 hours, and they only made $38,000 as the most being on that table. And why is because Borgata got so lucky. Everybody at that table were either $100 or $200 buy-in and knew nothing about betting the game of craps. They were all kids or young people. Patricia herself never threw the dice before in her life. And she started out with a $12 place bet on the 6 and a $12 place bet on the 8. And she didn't even press that 6 and 8 up to $18 until an hour and a half into that roll. So, they got lucky. They got very, very lucky. If
those kind of people, we like to call them ploppies, the people that don't know anything and they just plop down in a chair.
Yeah, that's right. So, that was how that changed that really bad time that I had those 21 straight days.
Now, wait, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, sorry. Well, I was going to say what we'd like to do is see you give an example of what you teach in your class, how you set the dice, because you have to set the dice a certain way before you roll them, and your objective when you're throwing the dice. And if you give us an example of that would be great. And then afterwards, we want to ask you bring up some of the objections that people have to control dice shooting, why they think it doesn't work.
No problem at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get off of my seat and I'm going to move the camera around and we'll get it set up and we'll be right back.
All right, great.
All right, so Dom, now we are at your craps table here. We're at the other end of the craps table, and you're going to give us a short example, right, of how you do this?
Exactly right. So the first thing that we do here is we try to set the dice in what we call the hard way set. And the reason why we use, and what that means is there are hard ways all around all 4 sides. I have a hard 10 on top, and then I have the 6, and the hard 4, and the hard 8. It doesn't really matter what numbers you put on top as far as which hard way you want. It's just your own feeling. If you want to put a hard 8 on top or a hard 10, that really it doesn't matter. But during the point cycle, you want to use the same setup all the time, because the idea is I'm trying to throw the dice the same way all the time so that I can repeat numbers. Because that's really the name of this game, is repeating numbers and avoiding the 7.
Yeah, so I guess we should really explain here for those people that don't know how craps works. The objective of craps is you throw the dice. You get handed the dice, you throw the dice. If you 2, 3, if you're on the pass line, 2, 3, 12, you lose. 7 or 11, you win. Any other number becomes the point, and then you have to roll that point again before you roll the 7 to win money. So that's why he's saying that you need to repeat numbers. So if he were to throw the dice right now and he throws a 10, the objective for him to win money would be to throw another 10 before he throws a 7.
That is a perfect explanation there, Matt. Exactly right. That's the name of the game.
Okay, so let's get that. Now that we have that out of the way, make sure everybody knows the objective of craps. Now this might make a little more sense to the people that weren't familiar.
Okay,
There you go.
and let me jump in with one thing here. So when you approach the table, you always want to stand in the same spot at the table, and when you roll the dice, you always want to aim for the same spot.
Yeah, here we go. You want to stand in the spot that you've been practicing at, meaning that you don't want to go into a battle with a weapon that you've never used before. So the same thing goes with this game of craps. If I've been practicing from stick left 1, meaning I'm in the first position and I'm to the left of the stick, right where I'm standing right now, that's where I want to shoot from, instead of shooting from the end or some other place, because I haven't practiced from there. So you want to go to the same spot that you've been practicing at, and there are better spots for people. A right-handed shooter standing, which I am, standing stick left 1, gives me an easy swing across my body. I can really make a nice little pendulum swing here across my body, and the distance from where I'm throwing the dice to the back wall is much less than the distance from the end of the table. Now, what does that really do? What does that mean? Well, obviously, if I have to throw the dice a longer distance, I have to put more energy on the dice. The more energy I put on the dice, the more randomness you might get at the far end. So from standing, if a right-hander stands stick left 1, and a left-hander stands stick right 1, we just have a shorter distance to the back wall. The other thing we want to do is we want to avoid the hook, because as soon as we get into the hook, we call it the mixing bowl. Those dice mix around.
By the hook, you mean that back corner where the table starts to curve, right?
Yeah, exactly right. You got that mixing bowl, and the dice will go around like that. We want to hit on the flat part of the back wall so that they come off the wall, bounce back, and stop right where they are.
If for anyone not too well versed at the craps table, if you see the green stuff at the end of the wall, we call that the alligator wall, and it's like the back of an alligator. It's a bunch of pointy triangles, and the idea of that is to it sort of randomizes the dice, makes them bounce in different directions. So exactly when you say the flat part, you mean the part below the alligator, or you mean the part above the alligator?
Well, no, you're gonna. You're going to hit the alligator. There's no question you're going to hit the alligator. What you're trying to do is hit the part of the wall that is not curved.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So right to, where I'm going to try to angle to is I'm going to try to hit just a little bit, maybe 3 or 4 inches away from where that curve begins on the back wall.
Sort of even with where the pass line is, right? If you were to follow that pass line straight back to the wall.
That's perfect, Matt. We call that using a runway. Depending on how tall you are, how much you can lean over, that is, and most people, that pass line is going to be their runway, or maybe even the don't pass if you can reach over a little bit further. That's going to be their runway. You want to throw in a straight line, and you want to throw with a little bit of an arc, and have the dice land about for the first bounce, about 6 inches from the back wall. So it lands on about 6 inches away from the back wall, over the chips that might be there from players that are standing. So over the chips, hit the back wall, bounce forward, and die. See, the whole thing here, the whole physics behind this throw is real simple. We're trying to put revolutions on the dice. What revolutions on the dice mean is we're trying to turn them. And what we're creating when we're throwing those dice with revolutions is we're actually creating centrifugal force to keep them on axis. Axis meaning, in this particular hardware set, we have a 6 and a 1 on the side, on the left side, and then here on the right. and a 6-1. So we have an axis here. And we're trying to keep the dice on that axis so that the most perfect shot would be the dice to land with a hardway number. That would be a perfect shot. Why? Because we set with hardways all around. And if we land with hardways, we threw the most perfect shot by keeping them on axis. So the first thing, as far as these degrees of freedom I was talking about, is we have revolutions to keep them on axis. Then what we're doing as well is when we pick up the dice, we're starting a little bit of a backswing, so we're putting some energy on the dice. And then as we go forward, we're going to give it a 45-degree angle on most tables. And what that 45-degree angle does is it gives you an awful lot of accuracy. You know, if you watch football at all and you look at Russell Wilson from Seattle, this year he's having a phenomenal year. This year they've been talking more and more about why his long passes have been so accurate. And the reason for it is, and they've been saying it, is because he puts air on the ball, he puts arc on the ball, and he's got it down where it begins to drop exactly where his receiver is to catch it. And that's exactly what we're doing here.
Now, when you say 45-degree angle, you mean you kind of want to launch him at a 45-degree angle?
So that the apex of the arc is 45 degrees, which is going to be maybe about 8-9 inches above where the rail is. And that gives you the most accuracy to get it to a spot that you want to get to. Now, when the dice land, we want to have them land flat. Try to get them so that all the sides land flat onto the tabletop. Why? Because what happens is we have energy when we are swinging and putting it on there. The energy goes into the tabletop and begins to sink into the tabletop, but we always have reverse energy. So we have energy coming back up again, and that takes the dice up and hit the back wall, but with not as much energy as the first throw. The swing is giving it a lot of energy to get to the back wall. When they hit and smack the table, energy into the table gets reduced, but there's still enough energy to get them to the back wall and back down again. We don't want them to die. We want them to hit the back wall. The casinos think that a dice controller, like myself or whatever, are trying to not hit the back wall. We're trying to make the dice land. And at Golden Touch Craps, we are teaching a throw that is a legal throw as far as what the casino wants you to do. Meaning, they want you to hit the back wall and have the dice come off those rubber pyramids, off the back wall. That is the legal throw. You know, the old blanket throw that people used to do in World War I, where they slid the dice along and tried not to get them to spin. That's why some casinos have underneath the felt, they'll have a piece of metal
Speed bump, they call it.
Speed bump, yes. Yeah, so you can't do that. And in the olden days, actually, the first crap tables, you watch some old movies, old westerns actually, they don't have rubber pyramids there. They just had a flat wall. But, you know, the rules of the game is you have to be able to pick the dice up with one hand. It has to be in complete view of the pit boss that's sitting down, and the dice have to be released, and they have to hit the back wall, and they have to bounce off the back wall. And that is the Golden Touch throw. That is what we teach so that we try not to get aggravation from the casinos. Because like I said, if you read their security manuals, and I do, I have them, I can get them, and I have them, they say that dice controllers are trying to not hit the back wall. That's not a Golden Touch dice controller. Because number one, that's so difficult to try to do, to get them to just die without going any further when you're throwing them. We want to follow the rules of the game, and so that they can't say anything about us not following the rules of the game. So going back to this, we get the dice and we set them with these hardware sets. And then what we're trying to do to get that rotation.
Well, I believe on your example, I think you just rotated one of them. So.
I did. Thank you. If you can see my fingers right now, I'm trying to create a fulcrum, meaning I want the dice to roll off of my fingers. See that? So that I'm creating this backwards rotation. And I'm trying to keep my fingers on the front of the dice as straight as I can. Kind of like that, if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
They're really straight, because if I have one finger lower than the other, that particular die is going to stay on that finger longer. And instead of rolling off together, this one's going to roll off before the other one. And we want them to land together, to stay together onto the table. Okay? So I'm going to get those dice there. And I'm going to, actually, I get up a little bit on my toes so that I can lean over a little bit. You know, if I was 6'8", I wouldn't have to do that. So I get them all set up, and I grip, and I square them with the back wall, squared all around. I'm looking at them. I'm a little bit above the tabletop, if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I turn my head, and I'm looking at my spot on the table, and I go into a backswing, and I spin them and land. Let's show you that all over again. So again, we're going to set.
Now, one thing we should mention is that the casinos don't really care if people set the dice, because a lot of people set the dice when they throw, and 99.9% of them don't know how to actually control the dice when they throw them, correct?
Oh, that's absolutely correct. I mean, it is a game where, like I said, the casinos are saying, here, guys, here are the dice, try to beat us. And so, yeah, people are always setting the dice. The funny thing that I find funny is people set the dice and then
shake them in their hand.
And shake them in their hand. So what the hell are you setting the dice for?
Yeah, I was actually just gonna say that, because unlike Steve, I love a craps table. I like to spend I've spent a bit of time in my day at a craps table.
Well, you know, there isn't a game that is more fun, in my estimation. If you go around the casino, the game that always has the most screaming and high fives is the crap table. You know, when you're playing a game of blackjack, it's really you against the dealer. Mm-hmm. And yeah, if everybody has standing and the dealer busts, maybe the players will high five each other, but that is not the other players, or there isn't one player on the table at a blackjack table that caused that to happen. In a crap game, it is a team game. Most players play to do, meaning they want the shooter to make points. They're not don't players. Most players are do. So when the shooter is making points and making numbers, it's like, you know, he's the star of the basketball team. He's the star of the baseball team.
I tell people that all the time. A hot craps table is the best place and the most fun you will ever have in a casino.
Oh, absolutely. And when you have a long roll, even if it's just a half an hour roll, and I shouldn't say just, because
I was going to say that's still a pretty long, long roll.
Know, everybody, when it's over with, is giving you high fives, and it's as if you hit the home run in the 7th game of the World Series in the bottom of the 9th to win. It's just a phenomenal feeling, and that's why it's such a great game.
I think I had like a 30-minute roll one time ever. I was at the Cosmopolitan in Vegas, and there were some people that were betting big there, and I think they both tipped me $50 or $100 afterwards.
Well, that happens a lot too. I mean, you have players that'll tip the shooter over and over again, because especially if you have some heavy-duty players at the table, and the shooter maybe is not betting anywhere near what these other players are doing, and maybe, you know, they had, you know, $1,000 on the 8, and you just hit the 8. Yeah, you know, throwing you a quarter, throwing you a $10, or, you know, even people will say, you know, give me a hard 10 for the shooter. You know, somebody who wants to tip. That's actually the best way to tip. That's why the way we tip the dealers is we put the money on the line instead of giving it to them, so that they can wind up making more money if you make your point. Yeah. So we'll try this again. We're going to grab this over. We're going to set. We're going to look at our spot, get into our throw, and throw the dice again. And now I'm going to just slide this forward. So maybe we can see what's taking place. Can you see the dice, guys?
I can see one. There you go. Now we can see them both.
Okay, so what we did is we threw a 6, and what we are trying to do here is we don't want the dice to land way up here. We do want them to land like this, and they're almost exactly on plane. They hit the back wall, and they landed about 6 or 7 inches off the back wall. This particular die, hopefully there wasn't a player standing here with chips, because it probably would have hit his chip, and maybe I wouldn't have gotten a 6 out of it. I would have liked to have this die be behind it like this one is, but that's the way it landed. I like to say that any long roll has to have a little bit of luck in it. DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak had a little bit of luck. Some of those hit to the shortstop 1 inch more, and the shortstop would have caught the ball instead of having it go past him. And so even with this, you need a little bit of luck. When we try to shoot the dice, we will have friends that we call blockers, meaning this hook, this end of the table where I'm standing right now, and I'm standing behind the 4 that you see here. If I'm a friend of the shooter who's shooting here, I'm not going to make a pass line bet. Why? Because I want to try to keep this area open for him, so that if the dice do roll back a little bit, it doesn't hit anybody's chips. So playing this game with friends who are shooters, who are learning this game, is what it's all about. And
So what? You'd have people standing there just making like what? Place to 6, place to 8, something like that.
Yeah. Well, again, they'd probably make comebacks, as we discussed yesterday before this interview. We suggest always being a comebatter. But they wouldn't put a pass line bet down.
Oh, they just wait till the point's established and then make a comeback.
Yeah, or place the 6 and the 8 if you wanted to be a place better. Yeah, and that's it. It's not a big deal at all. In fact, even if the point was a 10, they could, buy the 10 if they wanted to, just to have it out there on that point. It is more important to have this area open for what just happened, where that 4 came here instead of here, than that friend of yours making a $10 pass line bet with odds and winning $60 if you hit it. I mean, he or she can make the same amount of money over on the top.
Now, okay, so now that we have a better view of this, right? So this is we can sort of see the alligator felt that we were talking about before, where it's these pointy triangles, and those are what randomize the dice. So that's sort of still your variable there, correct? That's why sometimes it'll bounce a little further or something like that.
Well, that is the variable, and that's why as we said, the object of the game is to try to avoid the 7, and it's not going to happen all the time. Sometimes the most perfect shot, we're looking at dice rotating together and staying on axis, looking beautiful in the air. Sometimes that most perfect shot, all of a sudden we get a 7, and what the hell happened? Well, it's just the way it hit the alligator. That's what happened. But remember, random is a 7 every 6 rolls, like Steve said. And all we're trying to do is get better than 6 point. We're just trying to, instead of throwing a 7 every 6 rolls, we're trying to throw a 7 every 6.23 rolls or more. And if we do that with proper betting, just 0.23 better than random, not a big deal. 0.23 better than random. With proper betting, we'll have a 1.7% edge over the house. And as a blackjack player, the best you can get nowadays is a 0.5 point edge over the house, even as a card counter. So that's a pretty big edge. Remember that.
Dominic, one question I wanted to ask you, and I guess to point out to everyone who's watching, that concerning the betting as a controlled dice shooter, I think a lot of people think that you'd be betting hard ways, or making a lot of place bets, but that's not the case, correct?
That is not the case. I don't teach. I tell people that you don't want to make those center bets, those hard way bets or anything else like that, only because the edge is so great. I mean, you have edges in the center bets that can be all the way up to 13% against you. You want to make the lowest house edge bet you can make so that you win the most money. Think of it this way. If there was a bank on either corner of a block, you're going to put your money in the bank that gave you the most interest. And so if you're shooting, as an example, with that 1.7, let's make it an even number. You're shooting with a 2% edge, which means that you are avoiding, instead of at 6.23, to shoot at 2%, you're about 6.8. So every
meaning 7 every 6.8 rolls, correct?
Yes, instead of 6.23. So you got a 2% edge. So what you want to make is a bet on the table that carries with it an edge that is lower than 2%. Do you follow that? We don't want to make a bet that carries a 4% edge for the casino, because we are going to lose 2% on our bet.
Yeah, because what you're saying is if you can get it from rolling so if you're rolling 7 every 6 rolls, a casino still has an edge over you. If you get it to, what did you say, every 6.8 rolls, that means that you have a 2% edge over the house, if once you subtract out the house edge of the bet that you're making. So if you are making a bet that has a 1.41% edge, the pass line bet, then you only have a 0.6% edge over the house, is what you're saying, right?
That's exactly what I'm saying. So
Okay.
with that in mind, the edge on the place bet of the 6 and the 8 has a casino edge of 1.5% against you. You're playing with a 2% edge, you're making a 0.5 point on your money, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But now if we were a come better, and we made a $10 come bet, and we took just single odds, that edge is down below 1%, 0.87. So now on that 2% edge, we're actually making 1.2% on our money instead of just a 0.5 point by placing the 8 or the 6. And so that the come bet is the best bet that you can make at a casino. And the reason for it is because the casino doesn't take any vigorish off of the odds that you put down. In other words, they pay you exactly what they should pay you if you threw an 8, instead of taking the vigorish out when you place the 6 and the 8 for $12.
And by that he means that's short for the vig, which means the house edge, because that's how every game in a casino has a house edge. The odds bet in craps is the only bet you can make in a casino with no house edge, and that's because in order to make that bet, you have to make either the pass line bet or the don't pass bet or the come or don't come. It's the same bet. And those themselves have a 1.4-ish% edge on them.
Exactly.
So, so combine the two bets together. If you have a 1.4% edge and another bet with a 0% edge, you take the average of the two, and that's why he said with 1.41% edge on the pass line or the come bet, same bet. Once you put single odds, it lowers it to the average of the two bets goes down to 0.8, and then as you increase your odds behind it and bet more money behind it, it gets much more volatile because you're betting a lot more money, but your edge continues to go down. Because I think if you get to 10, if you find a casino, I think most of the horseshoe casinos in the country offer 100 times odds. If you're putting 100 times behind, it's like 0.1% or something, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it can be that low. But I always say to people, try to get the 5-time odds. Because the difference between 1 and 5 is much greater than the difference from 5 to 10. That's not to say that when I'm playing at a casino that I don't take the 10-time odds. But I tell my students the key number is to try to get to 5-time odds.
All right, you've given us examples of how to throw the dice and how you teach your students, and examples of how you've had great success. But as always, with anything concerning gambling, there's always controversy. And dice control is one of the most controversial subjects in the world of casino gambling. So there's a lot of people that really don't believe in it. And one thing I want to ask, now I know Stanford Wong, who is one of the most foremost experts in blackjack.
In math. PhD in math.
I'm sorry?
In math. He's a mathematician.
He has a PhD in mathematics.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the guy's a genius.
Oh, absolutely.
He's sort of like one of the godfathers of blackjack and card counting blackjack. So I have a book here back in 2005 because I know Stanford. I speak to him once in a while, and we correspond. But back in 2005, he believed in controlled dice shooting, and he wrote that book that I just showed you, and he had it out there for a while. But he later changed his mind and said he didn't think it really worked. Now I think part of the theory might have been that he was getting older and he didn't have as much dexterity and he couldn't control the dice as well as he wanted to. But your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, he wrote that book right after he took the class from me.
Oh.
In fact, I think he says that in the beginning of the book that he took the Golden Touch Crafts class. So he took the class from me and he wrote that book. Anyway, I don't know the reason why he changed his mind being a mathematician, because you can very simply, with math, calculate whether or not you have an edge when you're throwing the dice. I mean, it's a real simple thing, meaning that we call it your sevens to roll ratio, your SRR. You roll the dice 100 times. How many sevens did you throw in that 100 times? Do the division and see if you're better than 6, meaning 6 sevens every on the average every 100 rolls or whatever. So I have 6 rolling the sevens on the average every 6th roll. If you get better than that, then you're throwing with an edge. So you can, anybody who thinks that this doesn't work, all they have to do is put the time into practice and do the math, and maybe those people might not ever get an edge. Some people are just not that coordinated. I have a student who's actually one of my instructors. Didn't have an edge for 2 years. That lady and her husband, who passed on now, they practiced for 2 years straight. They were retired. They wanted something to do together. They enjoyed going to the casinos, and they wanted to beat this game of craps. They practiced for 2 years straight, and that's how long it took them, because they were in their late 60s, maybe early 70s when they started up with us. It took them that long to get an edge. Some people pick it up real quick. After 3 months of practicing, they have an edge. So that's the reason. And people that don't believe it, I'd never try to convince anybody, Steve, of it at all, because the math is there. You can do the math. And as I said to you before, we can argue religion, we can argue politics, but we can never argue that 2 and 2 equals 4. It always equals 4. So if you do the math, when you're throwing and practicing, or if somebody wanted to record 100 of my rolls or 1,000 of my rolls, they'll see that I'm avoiding the 7 less times than random would. So, but when somebody does say that, I say, fine, I'm not going to try to convince you. In fact, yell it from the hilltops that dice control doesn't work. It only makes it better for me. And let me say another thing to you. If dice control didn't work, why are casinos banned me from throwing the dice? Why am I banned at the Bellagio, at 75% of the casinos in Las Vegas? Why am I banned in the whole state of Louisiana, the whole state of Mississippi? Not for blackjack, for craps.
Okay, now Matt's going to bring up some other objections, but before we get to that, what happens when they ban you? What do they say? I mean,
it depends.
What's the procedure?
Most of the time, they're nice. I get a tap on the shoulder. Hey, Dom, can I talk to you? And I know exactly what's going to happen. Hey, Dom, I'm a big fan, but upstairs has decided that your game is way too good for us, and we don't want you playing anymore. Other times, they have been kind of mean. I've had armed guards around me, walking me to the cage. I've had them, Bellagio, when they banned me, that was a very tenuous and really terrible situation where they asked me for papers as if I wasn't a citizen of the United States anymore, that I was like you're in Russia or China and they ask you for your papers. It's just crazy. That was, so that's based, but most of the time it's just a tap on the shoulder. Hey, Don, can I talk to you? Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan. They've made a decision. You can't put, your game's way too good. They always say that your game is way too good and we don't want you playing here anymore.
Okay, now I have to
I've
say,
been
so
trespassed too.
yeah.
But anyway, go ahead, man.
Well, I have several friends that are in the AP community. They're advantage players. None of them play
Yeah.
dice, and I love playing craps. So I've always been very interested in controlled dice, and they're all very successful APs. And I've talked to them about it, and their rationale is that with the time and effort that needs to be put into learning it and being able to shoot at a degree where you have a good edge, they think that it's too easily countered by the casinos. They have the casino can just ask you to move spots. The casino can, if at night when you're not playing there anymore, after you go up to your hotel room and go to bed, they can close the craps table and sort of adjust the pyramids, the alligator skin around. I don't know. I've heard all sorts of crazy things that they say, and they just all pretty much say, I'll just stick to card counting.
Okay, so they're card counters, and that's great. And I've had a lot of AP card counters that have taken my class that have exactly the opposite view. And I'll say to those card counters very simply: as a card counter today with the rules, you're lucky. Those guys who are definite good players, I'm sure, Matt, are maybe getting 0.75% over the house. Maybe there's some casinos around the country that have pretty good rules, very few, but good rules. Maybe they're getting 1%. Maybe they are getting 1% when they're doing that. Well, I say to them, if they can get a little bit coordinated and get this an SRR of 6.23, which is pretty simple to do with some practice, they got an edge over the casino of 1.7. And now, as a come better, just with that one-time odds, they got that 1% edge that they're getting with blackjack. And if they put some more practice in and they get to an SRR of 7 or 8 or greater, I mean, my SRR is pretty damn high. The edge is phenomenal. You're not going to be able to get the same edge as a card counter as you would playing craps. And it's that plain and that simple. I mean, and the casino's doing things, but as a card counter, they're
going to
do
just many things.
They're looking at you to leave. They're going to say something to you. So they're going to do the same shit. Excuse my language. They're going to do the same stuff to you as a blackjack card counter as they are as a craps player. But the edge is going to be so much greater.
I don't know if there was any evidence. I don't know if there was any evidence to it, but I believe the story I heard is that my friend that I was speaking to had a friend that had made a bunch of money shooting dice in a year, in whatever time period, and swore up and down that it worked. And then apparently had such a bad run the next year or next time period after that he lost it all back. And then, so he might just be a little sour about that. So that might be where that's from. But so anyways,
the same story can be said about the blackjack card counter.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to point out, though, Dom, is that if you're counting cards, the casino doesn't really know you're counting cards until after a while and they follow you. But if you're there setting the dice, it's rather obvious that you're trying to be a controlled dice shooter. So that's one thing I see right away. They would be aware that you were trying to do it at least.
Well, that's not necessarily true either, Steve, because there are so many books out there and so many people that are so-called dice experts that are teaching people how to throw the dice. The casino is very, they know you're trying to do something, and as soon as you set the dice instead of winging them, and so many people are doing that. And as far as a blackjack card counter is, as soon as they have an inclination, you're right, when he first sits down and just puts out a $25 chip in the box and a hand is dealt, they're not going to know you're a card counter. But as soon as they have any kind of suspicion, what you do 10 against the 7, and then they start following you up on top, they know real quick whether or not you're a card counter or not. And that's why, you're trying to do camouflage and you're trying not to do the same thing all the time. And that's what reduces the edge. I'm still saying that, and I love playing blackjack and I love cards. It's my gun to my head. I'd rather play cards. It's just, I grew up playing cards. But the edge that I can get today in blackjack isn't close to the edge I get when I'm shooting craps. I mean, just not even close. Not even close. And people that have practiced, and sometimes it takes 2 years or longer, maybe, or maybe you'll never get to that point. of having a consistent edge. But when you do get to that point with some practice, and I've taught those AP guys as well, but maybe the fellow that Matt is talking about, all of a sudden it was in my mind who it might be because of the way he described it. And I think he actually took the lesson from me. But the you're gonna have a bigger edge anyway. That's it. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, so that was a great interview, Dom.
You were great interviewers.
People want to know more about you or your class or your books, where can they do that from? Your website is, what is it, goldentouchcraps.com?
www.goldentouchcraps.com. Our phone number is 866-SET-DICE. We will have our new schedule up right around Thanksgiving for next year. If you join our newsletter, you'll get a discount as an early bird special, Black Friday special that we run on any of our seminars going forward next year. And then we have our books, Casino Craps Shoot to Win, Dice Control, Golden Touch Dice Control Revolution, Cutting Edge Craps, and Beat Blackjack Now, which is our blackjack book on speed count that I see a 12-year-old can learn how to count cards. And then I have a new book that's coming out hopefully by the first of the year. It's going to be, in my mind, the epitome of all craps books. It's going to be from start to finish, how to play the game all the way up to dice control. So somebody who's never played craps before can pick up this book and understand like what you went through in the very beginning of this interview, and then all about dice control.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dom, for joining us today. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to leave a comment. Let us know what you think. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, click the bell, and turn all notifications on so you never miss any of our other great videos.
Yeah, thanks again, Dom and Matt, for your time. And everybody, thanks for watching, and best wishes for good luck in the casinos.